and someone I've really enjoyed on these CDs. So with that, I would like to introduce Miss Angie P. from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Hi, everybody. My name is Angie, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'm really, really glad to be here in Long Island, New York, having the pleasure to be able to meet Richard and Dante and Alan. And just had a great time when I came in at Dante's house. We had dinner. It was just absolutely wonderful. And I was feeling a little under the weather, so I kind of hung in yesterday and took care of myself, and I know I needed to save my energy for this morning. I had no idea that they even served breakfasts this big, and I told Jack, I said, this is a lot of people, and he goes, yeah, it is. So I was like, thank you for the comfort, Jack, but always glad to see Miss Bailey. She was the first speaker that I heard when I got sober, and to see her here today has just done my heart good. And I remember when I looked at her and she was speaking up there, and I thought to myself, I wonder if one day I would be able to do something like that if I were to stay clean and sober. And my sponsor said, you can do anything you want to do, Angie, if you just stay sober. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm from Greenville, South Carolina. And back home, we lived in a little white house on a red dirt road, and we got our water out of wells. We drank buttermilk, and we ate cornbread on a regular basis, and I'm from a family of Baptist ministers. I had flaming red hair and freckles, and nobody else in my family did. And one day, my brother had me locked in the outhouse, and he said, I know why you look the way you do. And I said, how come? He said, because the mailman is your daddy. So every time I saw the mailman coming, I would be like, Daddy! And I would run up to him, and he would put his arms around me and tell me how cute I was and pat me on the head. And thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous and the big book and sponsorship. I found out that turned out to be a little pattern for me, actually, that if you just put your arms around me and pat me on my head and tell me how cute I was, we were basically married at that point. And 6 months down the line, I'm going, what you say your last name was again? You know what I mean? So, there's reasons why I keep coming back. And my father had got a transfer out of South Carolina to Cincinnati, and in the process of traveling back and forth, he found himself a little girlfriend, and he moved us up to Cincinnati, and then to this little neighborhood, and he went to live with his girlfriend and their ready-made family, and that left my mother to raise my brother and sister and myself. I need to tell you, you'll hear me talk a lot about my mother. I love my mother, and I have the utmost respect for my mother. Right now, my mother is struggling with Alzheimer's, and on my 20th anniversary, I went over to her house to tell her how happy I was that she had been in my life through my sobriety, and when I walked in, she was afraid because she didn't know who I was. And, I don't know about you, I didn't know a lot about Alzheimer's, so I had no understanding as to why she didn't know who I was. And I got on the phone when I left there, and I called my sponsor, and my sponsor told me that her father had been through it, and she shared her experience with me. And so you'll hear me talk a lot about my mother, because my mother played a big part not only in my drinking, but also in my, thank you, ooh, double. Here you guys, I'm not going to cry this much, but so anyway, we moved up to Cincinnati, and my mother, she had cleaned bathrooms for a living when we were down south, and she made a solemn vow that her kids would not ever have to do that again. And education was real important to my mother. She sent me to Catholic school, my brother and sister and myself. And so now I'm at this Catholic school. I got a flaming red afro, freckles, a white blouse, a plaid skirt, and black and white Spaldings. And I got beat up and chased on a regular basis. And I totally understood why. I cannot sit here and tell you that I didn't understand why I got chased, because I looked at me every day. And I had never seen a black person with red hair and freckles, so I was sure that I was the only one in the world that had it, and felt that I was out there by myself. And one day I'm at school, and this girl named Squeaky was like 6'10" in the 5th grade. And she had this little posse that she hung out with, and they all chased and beat up kids that were different. So this one particular day, they stoned me on the way home from school. And it's so funny over here. They're like, oh. And I ran in the house, and I told my mother, I said, whew, I got away from them. They almost got me, Mama, but I got away from them. And when my mother sounded like this, I knew that she meant business. She goes, Angela, at some point you got to learn how to stand up for yourself. So what I want you to do, Angela, is you go out into that parking lot and you stand up to Squeaky. I said, you want me to do what? She said, you go out there and you stand up to Squeaky, or you can take the butt whooping that I'm going to give you. And I knew what my mother's butt whoopings felt like, and I only knew what Squeaky's appeared to be. So I went out into the parking lot, and I walked up to her with my mother standing in the screen door looking. I walked up to her and said, my mother said no, that's a lie. I said, my mother said I'm supposed to fight you. And she said, well, come on in. So I had watched my brother, him and his friends would be playing like they were fighting and boxing, and I put my 2 fists up, and I closed my eyes as tight as I could. And I remember when my brother used to be boxing with his friends, they have their 2 pinkies up. And then he would rock from side to side like this. So here I was standing in front of this big Amazon like this. Now, since I've been sober, I've heard about the committee. But I had that committee when I was younger, too, because I heard something in my head say, now, she going to beat your tail. Then I had something over here going, but just reach up and hit her. You'll get her, just reach up. So I caught her off guard, and I went, oh, I got her right here. It was like the happiest day of my life. I had hit the giant. Nobody else did, but I did. Ah! And now when I hit her, she didn't budge. I must tell you that. And but I got this thing called alcoholism that helps me remember what I should forget and forget what I should remember. And what I forgot was that she damn near beat me to death. What I remember was that I hit her that one time. That one time. And to me, as far as I was concerned, I won that fight. Now, she was on top of me, beating the life out of me, and my mother comes out the door and said, Lord, let me go get my child. And when my mother pulled her off of me, I said, Mama, I hit her, Mama. I did it. And she said, Lord, get in the house. And all I could remember was that I hit her, and that I hit her good, and it made an impact in her life. And from that point on, I became a boxer. I started fighting every opportunity I got. Now, my mother, she wanted us to do better in life. She had went from working at a restaurant to working at this factory, and she moved us from this ghetto that we lived in to this really wonderful neighborhood. And we lived in a red brick ranch house and a lot of land, and we just had a lot of fun. And I got introduced to, we moved into this neighborhood. We were the first African-American family to move into this neighborhood. So from the age of 13 to 20, I wasn't even black no more. I listened to Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band. I listened to a little Jackson Brown. My favorite girl group was Heart. And the first concert I ever went to, baby, was Led Zeppelin, 1979. Yeah. But listen, I was at the Ted Nugent Foreigner concert, right? Foreigner was singing Feels Like the First Time. I looked around that Coliseum. It was about 30,000 white people and me. And I said, I am bad. Woo! So I'm hanging out with these 5 girls. These 5, I don't mean any disrespect, but it was 5 white girls. We lived in an all-white neighborhood. And one day I was over at my friend Rebecca's house. And we're down in the basement with her brothers. And Rebecca's down there. And all of a sudden her mother comes down and she goes, Rebecca, That's my white woman voice. Rebecca? And then she said something that I had never heard before. She said, family meeting. And when she said family meeting, everybody in that basement rose up like a choir and went upstairs to the living room. So I went upstairs to the living room too. I'd never seen anything like this before in my life. So all of a sudden Rebecca goes and her mother goes in her white woman voice. She goes, Rebecca, your father and I have been communicating. This is how I heard it anyway. We understand that there's been some alcohol consumption, Rebecca. And your father and I have discussed it, and we feel that if you're going to drink, we would like for you to drink at home. I said, your mother just said, what? She goes, oh, yeah, she thinks it'll be safer if we drink at home. I thought that was the closest family I ever met in my life. I mean, I went home and I was like, Mama, can I have a beer? And she was like, I said, okay, I'm going down to Becky's house. And I hung out with these girls and we had big fun. I mean, we went to concerts, we drank, we got in bars, we were underage. I mean, I remember I was at this bar one night called Never on Sunday, and it was a Sunday. And I was at that bar and the band was playing Brown Sugar. And I remember I was in the middle of the dance floor and I just knew that song was written for me. I mean, I literally was fighting people to get off the dance floor so that I could be on the dance floor by myself, dancing to Brown Sugar. How come you dance so good? And so I'm hanging out with these girls, and I'm in my backyard one day, and my friend Rebecca comes over, and she has a brown bag with 2 bottles in it, and she gave me one, and she took one, and it was Boone's Farm apple wine. Right. You know, it's the same thing everywhere we go, isn't it, Jack? As soon as I mention Boone's Farm, the whole room goes, oh, yeah. Yeah, Boone's Farm. Then I hear it when I'm in the line. Strawberry Hill is what I drank, and this is what I drank. And anyway, so Rebecca said that her brothers had schooled her in the art of chugging, and for us to turn these bottles up and drink as long and as hard as we could, and that's what I did. And I can tell you that what happened to me did not happen to my friend Rebecca. Man, something hit the bottom of my feet and it rose slowly to the top of my head. And I made a conscious decision right then and there that I was going to do this every opportunity I got. And that's what I set out to do. So I'm hanging out with Rebecca and we drinking and we going to bars, and I don't mean any disrespect, but you know, I smoked a little marijuana. I didn't really like it. Seemed like I ate everything in everybody's freezer that had been there for 10 years. And my response to everything was, whoa. Wow. Really? I mean, they set my afro on fire in school, and I remember I was just standing there up against the locker letting it burn. You know what I mean? Just until I had like 3 little cores, you know, they looked like black coal on my head. And they were like, Pepper, your hair's burning, baby. I was like, whoa. You know what I mean? So I couldn't really do that. And I did some hallucinogens, and it got me a mental health diagnosis. But just one particular day, we were riding around, and my friend Rebecca gave me 2 little pills, told me to take 1. And I took 2, and it was strawberry mescaline. And Right. So I'm driving there in the back seat. We're rolling right along. And all of a sudden, they said they wanted to go to McDonald's. And at that moment that I saw that McDonald's arch, that trip took off. And it just seemed like the car just went, shoo. And things became so colorful. And that arch to the McDonald's arch was burning so bright on the side of my face that I had the visor over here. I had my sunglasses just laying over here. I mean, it just got so hot, and all of a sudden the steering wheel just got real big, and so I'm pulling into McDonald's like this. So we pull up to this little yellow box that had about 9 holes in it. And I get up there, and all of a sudden this little guy in the box wants to argue with me and start asking me questions that I don't like. Like, what do you want? What do you want? No, what do you want? You see, so I'm arguing back and forth with him, and I did what any alcoholic would do. You attack me, I'm going to attack you back. So I'm arguing with the little guy in the box, and I'm saying to myself, it don't matter. I can't fight that, but I can whoop him. He's about the size of this bottle. And I get up to the next window, and she asked me for my money. And when I turn around and look at her, her eyelashes are like this. And she's trying to take my money, which I was not okay with at all. So my friends are in the back seat laughing. We get up to the next window. It's some guy with a big visor on that separates like this going, salt or ketchup, salt or ketchup. So by this time, I'm just appalled at the whole thing. And I freeze at that window, and they end up calling the police, and rightfully so. And so the police car pulls up, and when the police car gets there, he gets out of the car, and he's walking. I'm tripping. Okay? I'm tripping. I'm on a bad trip. And he gets out of the police car, and his body's just wiggling. He's walking towards me like this. Everything is jiggling. I knew right there, I said, this is not going to be good at all. I can tell right now. So he walks up to me, and he walks over to my window, and he goes, ma'am. What seems? I said, you know what, officer, why don't you go ahead and slap them cuffs on me? I can see where this is going right now. So he took me to jail. You know what I mean? I'm under the influence. I'm tripping. They go to jail. They call my mother and tell her that I'm locked up. And my mother said, well, make sure she's warm. And she was not coming to get me. And they ended up putting me in a little, what they called a floor for me to relax and just get myself together, which means psych ward. And I never told the doctor that I did any drugs at all. I just told him I had issues. I had concerns. Things have happened to me in my life. And I'm going to tell you something. My parents tried to get me the best possible help they could. They sent me to therapists. And I'm not saying anything bad about therapists. It's just this particular one. And I'm in her office, and she goes, Angie, your family's very concerned about you. Your father says that you're doing a lot of drinking, and they're all concerned, and you won't seem to talk to anybody. And so that's why they have you here with me, Angie. They want to know what makes you tick. What do you see when you look at the world? What's going on with you, Angie? They're concerned. They prayed for you. They had revivals back down south. They've dipped you in the river, and here we are. What's going on with you, Angie? What do you see when you look through your eyes? I said, you want to know what I see? But look what she did. She then goes in her desk drawer, reaches down, and said, I know how it's hard for you to communicate, so I got these for you. And she pulls out 2 sock puppets with little jingly eyes, and she goes, maybe you can use these. And I looked at her, and I thought to myself, maybe I can. So I put these little sock puppets on. I said, you want to know what I see? She goes, yeah. I said, well, you know what? Let me just take a deep breath because it's going to be deep. And I said, I see a little silhouette of a man. Scaramouche, would you do the fandango? I say, thunderbolt and lightning, very, very frightening me. Galileo, Magnifico. Oh, I'm just a poor girl. No, and she goes, wait a minute, I'll be right back. And she went and she got my father, and he came in and he said, that's why we can't get you no help. And I pulled off these sock puppets, and I was like, Daddy. And he was like, oh, okay. Well, I can understand that. If she pulled them out, you look real good doing what you did. So my parents really tried to help me, and I'm hanging out with these girls, and we're just having the time of our lives. And if you're an artist like me, you know that one day somebody's just gonna discover you. You know, I've been singing since I was a little girl, and I knew that one day somebody was just going to discover me. I wasn't even going to be singing. I was just going to be sitting somewhere, and some guy from Epic Records is going to show up and go, "Hey, don't you sing?" So my father, trying to be helpful, got me a part-time job at a recording studio, and I loved it. It was just everything about music just sunk into my soul. And so I'm in this recording studio, and I'm hearing all these people recording records and groups that are from Cincinnati, and they're recording, and I'm in there, and I'm in the bathroom one day, and I hit my best Whitney Houston note. And I come out, and there's this tall brother standing there. And he goes, "Was that you singing?" I said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, it was." He said, "I can make you famous." "For real?" He said, "All you got to do is come to Las Vegas with me." No, and listen, everybody, uh-oh. And this doesn't sound like it's going well at all. And I said, "No problem." And I went home and I called a family meeting. And when everybody got in the living room, I looked at them and I stood before my parents and my brother and sister, and I said, "I will be back for you. As soon as I get my first Grammy, I'll be back for you. And no longer will we have to live in poverty." And my mother was like, "We don't live in poverty." And my father always kept things real simple. He just said, "You know what, Angie? Something is wrong with you." He goes, "No, seriously, you know, my other two kids are fine, but something is wrong with you, girl." So my father said, "Angie, please don't go. Please, you don't know this man." And my mother's like, and my little sister's crying, and my brother's going, "Please don't go, Angie." But I had to go, see, because this man that only heard a little bit of me said that he could do for me what I couldn't do for myself. And that's been the story of my life. And I went out to Las Vegas, and I was a young girl singing in casinos, getting drunk and having the time of my life. But something started happening that I hadn't really noticed a lot of, was that I began to drink and, well, it probably ain't happened here in New York, but I would drink and wake up to people that I didn't know. And, you know, waking up to somebody and both of us looking at each other going, "Damn!" And he's got one tooth and it's gold. You know what I mean? So it was obvious to me that although he had no teeth, he definitely had some money. And his name is Zeb, and he's telling me, "You told me you loved me last night." I was like, Zeb, I'll tell you, alcohol, that stuff will kill you. And so I'm hanging out with this gentleman who really had my best interest at heart, so I thought. But now I'm getting blacklisted because I'm drinking and I'm crying on stage. My clothes are coming off, and it just happens. I take a drink of alcohol, my shirt come off. It's just the way it goes. Just the way it went. I accepted it. I knew that it was going to happen. And I tried to warn them on several occasions. But they said, "You sing well." See, that's all they wanted from me. They didn't know what came with it. So I'm singing, I'm getting blacklisted, and all of a sudden I go from having everything to having nothing. This gentleman had his own little affliction that he was dealing with. And we go from having it all to having nothing at all. And one day he comes and gets me after we're living in this seedy hotel, nasty hotel. He comes and gets me, and he tells me that he needs me to drive him to the store. And when I got into that car, my sole purpose was to go to that store and come back to the hotel and finish drinking. But what happened was he went in that store and he robbed it and he shot and he killed the owner. And when he came out of the store running with blood on his shirt and on his hands, he told me to drive, and that's what I did. So it went from me taking that innocent little drink with my friend Rebecca at the age of 13 to years later being in Las Vegas, getting ready to go on trial for the taking of another person's life. And that's one thing that I had when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. That was one thing I was never going to tell anybody because I didn't want to be judged by it. And I need to tell you that to this day, this gentleman is still in the penitentiary in Nevada. And here I am in Long Island, New York, carrying the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know why? Because there's one who has all power. That one is God. So I get a floater out of the state of Nevada, and if you don't know what that is, it's a letter from the governor that says, please do not come back here. Don't you bring yourself back here ever. No problem, sir. So I get home back to Cincinnati, and I tell my family, that's it, no more for me. No more drinking. And that lasted all of 2 weeks, because I was unaware that I had this thing called alcoholism, and as much as I'd like to stop on my own, 2 weeks was going to be the most. Back in Cincinnati on Sundays, you could get on the city bus and you could ride all over the city for free. It was called Sunday Pass Riding. And we go all over the place, my brother and sister and I, and we get to downtown Cincinnati to the corner of Liberty and Vine. And there's a restaurant over there, and when I look over there, there's pimps and Lincolns and Cadillacs and prostitutes, and my little sister said, boy, you couldn't pay me to go over there. And my brother was like, shoot, me neither. And I was sitting there thinking, I'm going over there tomorrow. Because that's the difference in me and my brother and sister's thinking. See, they see it and they know it's automatic trouble. They're not going. I see it and I think, I wonder what's going on over there. So I started taking the number 20 bus from Springdale, where we live, to downtown Cincinnati, which was a 2-hour ride. And I took that bus on a regular basis. And I sat down there in those bars and I watched those pimps and I watched those prostitutes and I watched them making money and gangsters hanging out. And I thought, this is it right here. This is my family. And one day came when I didn't take that bus back home. And I stayed downtown Cincinnati. And I'm a young girl down there drinking in these bars. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I meet 3 guys who would turn out to be my best friends. And their names was Tie-Dye, Greasy Feet, and No Neck. And I thought these guys were brilliant. These guys taught me how to roll up clothes, wear a girdle into a department store, roll up the clothes, stick them in my girdle all the way around with a coat on and walk out. I thought they were brilliant until I got arrested. And I get arrested this one day calling myself trying to steal, and I end up going to jail. And I go to jail and they do a physical, and when they do the physical, I find out I'm pregnant. When I went to court, they actually sentenced me to the Ohio Reformatory for Women. And I can tell you that the only reason why I didn't lose my mind was because my baby was growing on the inside of me, and I would rub my stomach on a regular basis. And I would tell my baby, it's gonna be better. When I get out of here, I'm gonna make a home for us, and we're gonna live together. That's why I didn't lose my mind. I had my son, and by this time my parents had kicked me to the curb. My drinking had gotten so bad that they didn't want to talk to me anymore. They had to let me go. And the warden comes to me and says, you're going to have to call somebody to come and get this baby, or he'll become a ward of the state. And so I called my mother and I said, Mom, I need you to come up here. And she said, Angela, for what? And I said, I got a baby. And she went into tears. She said, Angie, you got a baby? I said, yes, ma'am. And I need you to come and get it, or they're going to take it. And my parents jumped to the fact that they were coming to get their grandson. And they came up to the Ohio Reformatory for Women, and they got my little boy. And it's like it was yesterday. And they walked out of that prison with my son, and I watched my son through a slit this big. And I said, it's going to be better. And when I got my freedom, my son was 4 years old, and all the way down 71 South, all I could think about was that I just want to be with my baby. I want to hold his hand. I want to walk through the park with him. I got to the Greyhound bus station, and if you're new in this room and you're reading the big book, it's in more about alcoholism. I got down to the Greyhound bus station, and suddenly the thought crossed my mind. Just like it talks about it in the book, surely suddenly the thought crossed his mind that he could put a little whiskey in his milk. He sensed he wasn't being a bit too smart. And I went up to that bar with the sole intention of just having one drink. And it would be years before I saw my son again. It would be years. And it baffled me. I couldn't understand that as much as I loved my child, why couldn't I go there and be there for him? Because I got this thing called alcoholism that's more powerful than the love I feel for my children. And the love I feel for my children went deep. In the process of me hanging out, I'm drinking and I go to jail again and I get probation. And I'm pregnant. And I need to tell you that through my whole entire pregnancy, I got absolutely no prenatal care at all. I drank my entire pregnancy. Now, I want to tell you that God has always placed angels in my path. All through my drinking, people tried to help me. And I was trying to hold a job at this restaurant and drink at the same time. And this white couple named Elizabeth and Tom said to me, Angie, look, we're getting ready to open up another one of these in Bloomington, Indiana. Why don't you come over there and work for us? I said, okay, because I'm giving my daughter up for adoption. So I had my daughter in Bloomington, Indiana, with the sole intention of giving her up for adoption. And when you get ready to give a child up for adoption, what they do back then was they would just come in and they would throw this like little black tarp over you so that when they took the baby out, you wouldn't be able to see it. But I saw her hair. And I said, that's my baby. Why can't I take care of my kids? As much as I wanted to, I didn't understand why I couldn't take care of my babies. I had been talking to my sister back and forth, and she had told my mother that I had went to Bloomington. And my mother called the University of Indiana Hospital at Bloomington, at Indiana University. And they took my daughter to the nursery, and they took me to medical. And as I laid there, the phone rang, and it was my mother. My mother said, Angie, please don't give her away. We'll take her. And if you don't want her, we'll raise her. But she don't deserve to not know where she came from. So I ended up on a bus trip with my daughter. She was so little because I hadn't had any prenatal care with her. And I'm on this bus and I'm drinking. And I'm just praying to God, please just don't let her cry. I don't know what to do with her. Don't let her cry. And my daughter didn't make a sound. There were times I had to lift her little body up just to see if she was breathing. And I drank that whole 4-hour trip. And when I got to the Greyhound bus station, my father and mother were there. And I walked into the station. And when I walked into the station, my father walked up to me and not saying a word to me because he knew I was drinking. He took that baby out of my arms. And he said, we got it from here. And I said, Daddy, what am I supposed to do? He said, I don't know what you're supposed to do, baby. But she didn't ask for this. And when they pulled off with my daughter, I walked up to the bar. And I sat in that bar and I began to drink. And I drank every single day as if there was no tomorrow. By this time, I was living at a boarding house on the banks of the Ohio River. And one day I'm at the bar and this guy said and wanted me to come up and use other substances with him. And when I went up there, he shot ice water into my veins. And I ran out of there and I started getting sick as I walked back. It was 17 blocks from that place to where I lived. And I sweat and I was throwing up and I knew that I was going to die. But if I didn't learn anything else from being from a family of Baptist ministers, I knew that when that day came that I was supposed to call on the name of Jesus. And that's what I did. I said, please, don't let me die like this. Don't let me die in the streets of Cincinnati. And I got a bottle of Thunderbird Classic and I'm walking back down to this place and I'm drinking it and I'm sick and I get to the door and there's a blonde woman standing there, a little white woman who looked at me in my face and said, honey, you don't have to keep living like that. And I said, you don't understand. I'm sick and I'm about to die. And she went up to my room with me and she put a wet rag on my head and she began to tell me about her drinking. She didn't tell me how much she drank. She didn't even tell me what she drank. But she talked about how she felt. And she asked me if I would go someplace with her. And she took me to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, when I got sober 20 years ago, it wasn't a lot of African American people in AA, kind of like this morning. I see y'all, though. Power to the people. I see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. I hope you feel special. I hope you feel like chocolate chips in the middle of a big old glass of milk. So she brought me to this very white establishment. And I'm walking up the sidewalk, and I got white men reaching out their hand going, "Hi, I'm Wino Bob. I'm Big Book Tom." I was like, well, they got interesting nicknames. And then I get up the steps, and all of a sudden this big biker dude grabs me and goes, "Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Squirrel." And I was like, "Squirrel? Put me down. The hell is wrong with you?" Because I came from the streets, we did not share that kind of affection. And then a thought crossed my mind. Alcoholics Anonymous? I said, "Oh, sister, you have hit an all-time low. You at the A&A. And so we go in, and she says that this guy that, he's going to get up and tell his story. And so this older white guy gets up, and he tells his story. And, from a newcomer's aspect, he gets up there, and to me, it sounded like he said, "I used to beat my wife every day. And I beat her today, but I haven't had a drink of alcohol." This is what I heard. I said, these white people crazy. Then y'all bust out laughing when he would talk just like that. And I thought, what in the world? And I remember I sat over to the side, almost on the windowsill, and stayed in case this was contagious in any kind of way. So this guy tells his story, and then everybody claps. They pass a basket. I said, okay, well, I know about that. That's churchy. And then afterwards, everybody got up in a big circle, grasped their hands together, and bowed their heads to pray. I said, oh, my God, and they hypocrites, too. Now, I made a decision to stay in Alcoholics Anonymous. It wasn't like I was really like you. I mean, I had some issues, but, I'm a special kind of chick. And, I'm loud, and everything is because I'm black. And I'd be at the coffee bar. I'd say, "Can I have a cup of black coffee, please?" And she'd go, "Hold on one second, Angie." And I go, "It's because I'm black, ain't it? That's why I can't get my coffee. Why I got to drink my coffee out of a white cup." So all of a sudden, I became very belligerent and militant. And it could be some girl up giving her lead, telling her story. And she would say something like, before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I really didn't like black people. But now, after being here with relentless sponsorship, now I do. And I was be the one that would stand up and go, "Well, we ain't going nowhere. Freedom! Freedom! Oh, freedom!" And my sponsor, she was from England. And she would say things like, "Would you sit down?" I said, "You know what? By the way, me and you need to have a little conversation, because you're going to have to learn how to be a little nicer to me. With slavery and all." She goes, "Oh, really? And who do you personally know that was a slave?" I said, "Well, I ain't know nobody personally." She goes, "Well, until you do, we won't be having this conversation." I said, "I see what's going on here. Ain't nothing changed. Not a thing." So I stayed around AA, and, I was loud and belligerent. And about this time, I don't mean any disrespect, but this little crack problem may not happen here, but it came into AA in Cincinnati, and people start showing up. Real skinny people start showing up. And their eyes would be real big. And I said, "What? You don't drink? You smoke crack? Well, you can't stay here." Now, this is what I told him. Maybe they'll come up with a Crackaholics Anonymous. But right now, you in AA, and we deal with alcohol here. Now, here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to sponsor all of you. But please do not talk when you're in this building. And I would read the big book loud to them. If they said they wanted to go to the bathroom, I'd be like, hey, hurry back. And I'm telling you that to tell you this. So one day I'm at a meeting, not a cloud on the horizon. And suddenly the thought crossed my mind, because y'all had been talking about God using you as an instrument. I said, you know what? I think God is using me as an instrument too. And he want me to go find some black people and bring them into AA. So I went to the Wednesday night meeting because I had been there and y'all knew I had been there. I said, well, surely they would want to know if I was leaving. And they said, is there any AA related announcement? I said, thank y'all for the real big book and, all the coffee and everything. And, I hope y'all know that drinking is bad for you. But I'm going to roll on up out of here. And, thank you very much. And this old timer, you know how they can be sometimes. He goes, well, get out of here then. There's people trying to stay sober in here. We'll see you if you make it back. I said, oh, it's the old timer. It's like that. And I grabbed my book and I walked out. And I went down to the first corner and waited for the bus. And I said in my mind while I was walking down there, the first black person I see drunk, I'm going to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I got on that number 43 bus, and here come a brother, staggered on. I said, bingo. I slid over next to him on the bus. I said, look here, my brother. You been drinking? He said, yeah, I had a little something. I said, you know what? You might be an alcoholic. So he started cussing me out and everything, and I told him, I said, the people at the AA club told me that you would probably react like this to my information. So I'm going to give it to you the only way that you can receive it and the only way that I know how. And I opened up the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I went to chapter 5, and I told you that I'm from a family of Baptist ministers. And I stood up and I opened up that book, and I said, rarely! Did you hear what I said? I said, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. I said, those who do not recover are those who are constitutionally incapable of being honest. And the bus driver said, oh, hell no. He said, you got to get off this bus. I said, and you, oh, Mr. Bus Driver, are an alcoholic too. So I went down to the bar where I knew there was some black drunks. And when I walked in, they was all on the dance floor. But see, I had been with y'all long enough to know that that was a mask they was all wearing, that they was in pain. So I walked through the dance floor and went over to the jukebox and pulled the plug out the jukebox, and they all stopped. I said, I got some good news. Oh, I got some good news. I'm here to tell you black alcoholics that you don't ever have to drink again. One day at a time, keep coming back, live and let live, and keep it simple. They said, well, what you doing down here? I said, well, I graduated. And now I'm doing service work. Y'all coming with me? They said, girl, if you don't plug that jukebox in, we'll kill you. I said, the people at the AA club told me you act like that with my information. So I'm going to give it to you the only way that you can receive it and the only way that I know how. And I opened up that book and I climbed up on that bar and I said, rarely! Did you hear what I said? I said, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are... The bar owner said, get your ass out of here. Don't you come back in here. So he put me out the bar, and I read the book to the passerbys. And suddenly the thought crossed my mind. Surely one drink won't hurt me. You guys are too funny, man. Y'all New Yorkers are funny people, man. I ain't never had that kind of audience, like, oh... Just when we thought it was going to be over. Can you believe it, Debbie? There's more. So I went in the bar and I told the bartender, just give me a shot of gin. And she gave me a shot of gin and I threw that baby back. And 45 minutes later, I was in a crack house. We got to be careful. See, I was harming God's children when I was yelling at them, telling them that they couldn't be here. I was mistreating God's children. And I don't know, if you like me, I don't understand when things happen with you. But I most certainly understand when things happen to me. And I needed to go understand where these people were coming from. And I need to tell you that I went back out and I went on a binge that almost killed me. And when I showed up to Alcoholics Anonymous, June the 20th, 1991, my hair was matted to my head. I had been sleeping outside. My stomach was protruded out. My hands were swollen. My lips were black. And with all the shame and guilt of leaving Alcoholics Anonymous, I showed back up. And I walked into that coffee bar. And that same old timer that told me to get out was working behind the coffee bar. And when he saw me, he looked at me in absolute shock and he said, Angie, you gonna die. And I said, I know. And I need you to help me. And he took that book down off the shelf and he said, you start reading the first page of this. And you read it all the way through. He said, but what I want you to do is I want you to go out to that front door and reach your hand out. Introduce yourself and tell people that you are alcoholic. And I stood at that front door as nasty and as dirty and stinking as I was. And I reach out my hand and I would say, my name is Angie. I'm an alcoholic. And based on the way that I look, people pulled back from me. Based on the way that I look. See, the way that I look would have said to you, I'll never get sober. But on the inside, I was begging for sobriety. We got to be real careful that these people that come in that don't look like we do now, we got to be real careful. We got to carry the same message to them. You know why? Because one day they could turn out to be your, what is this called? The Jones Beach Breakfast Group. They'll be your speaker, just like I am. So I came back to AA and I got with my sponsor, and she immediately started me on the steps. We got an institution meeting where we go into jails. And I've been doing that since I've been sober. And at about 3 years sober, my family had my kids. And everybody in AA was saying, you know, you need to get your kids back, Angie. And I'm trying to get my kids back. And at 3 years sober, my family who had adopted them, my mother and her husband, my father and his wife, say, Angie, we don't want you to come around. Let these kids have the same opportunity that you had growing up. And I walked away from my children. But I had to see them. And if you're a parent, you'll know what I mean. When I said when they were at soccer games, I was over by the tree with a baseball hat and sunglasses on, but I had to see them. I was at my son's basketball games, up in the bleachers, way behind everybody, but I had to see them. And on my daughter's 18th birthday, she called me, and she said, I need to talk to you. And I called my sponsor, and I said, okay, here it is. They're going to want to know answers that I don't have. And my daughter, we went to the mall. And she spent every damn dime I had. And I told my sponsor, I said, next time when I pray, I should be a little more specific. But I was able to clean off my side of the street with my daughter. And my daughter has graduated with her bachelor's from Grambling State University, and now she's in college in Louisiana, working on her master's. Not because of anything that I had done, but because my mother was not a great mother, but she was a heck of a grandmother. My son is in prison, and he's in prison for a long time. And I thank people that take the meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous into the prisons, because my son is a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He has a sponsor, and he's doing the deal there. Now, when I was drinking, I didn't go to school. So I really only went to about the 7th grade. And by the time I got back to you, alcohol had fried my brain so much that I could barely read. And I would sit in them big book meetings and I would struggle with words. I'm so thankful for Alcoholics Anonymous, because those people were patient. And they told me what words meant. Thank God for the book meetings. And one day I'm in my own apartment at the age of 40. I got my first apartment in AA. And I'm going to meetings and I'm working with my sponsor. And I'm watching TV one night and Sally Struthers comes on the TV and she goes, "You too can get your GED on." I said, "No problem." So I started sending money to Stratford, and they started sending me books, and I would get the books, and people in AA would come over to my house, and we would study English, and we studied science, and we studied math. And by the time I got finished, I went and I signed up for the equivalency of a high school diploma, and I took the test, and I got a perfect score. And when that diploma came in the mail, December the 7th, 1999, I grabbed it and I said, "Thank you, God. I'm going to college." So I went up to the University of Cincinnati and I went into admissions and I was like, I want to go to, oh my God, I want to go to college. You don't know how bad I want to go to college. And the lady said, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "I don't know." Y'all got a 1-year doctor program? I wouldn't mind being the first human Dr. Pepper. And my last name's Pepper. So I start my little journey in college, and I now have my liberal arts and social sciences and addiction studies. And may not be a lot to you, but it's huge to me. So me and my daughter, all we do is just kind of diagnose our entire family. That's why I love my mother, you guys. She don't know. She don't know the blessing that you've been in my life. And I had every intention to tell her when I went to see her on my 20th anniversary just how good you guys have been to me. Just how you've taken this woman that was a gutter bucket drunk and turned her into a lady. I remember my sponsor told me one day, I was cussing in a meeting and I was saying God right behind it. And she goes, "You know, Angie, profanity and spirituality don't go together." So I knew that I couldn't talk about God and cuss at the same time. And I decided that I wanted to talk about God. I got a good life, you guys. I got a phone call some years ago, and they said that they wanted me to speak at the International in Toronto. And I thought it was my friend Tony playing on the phone. So when he said, "I'm so-and-so, I'm calling, we'd like for you to be the opening speaker at the International in Toronto," I was like, "Quit playing on my phone, man." And then I went and I walked in a bedroom and looked at the caller ID and it said New York. And I said, "Yes, sir, I will." And at that time, They were saying that felons, if you had a felony, you couldn't come into Canada. Well, I had felonies. And I told them that. And they said, why don't you try this and try this and try this? And on the day that I was supposed to leave, the mail came. And the letter said, welcome to Canada. And we drove up there. And we got to that booth where we were getting ready to cross over into Canada. And I mean, I went through hell or high water, baby, to get this paper. And it came. And I pulled up to that booth. And that damn border police looked in the car and said, is it just you two? We said, yeah. He goes, go on in. I said, oh, no, clown. Oh, no, my brother. You're going to look at this $200 paper. You're going to check this damn car. You're going to look in the trunk. And you're going to look in my shoes. But somebody's going to look in this car. And we went over into Canada. And, man, I had the time of my life. And I got up, walked up. They said the night I was supposed to speak, it was after the bagpipes. And I was walking up these really high steps to the platform. And I remember thinking, how do you go from sleeping down by the river to speaking at an international convention? I'll tell you, there's one who has all power. And that one is God. May you find him now. And I walked up those steps and I got to that platform. And man, I tell you what, I couldn't see nothing but nobody's shoes. All I saw was shoes, and that was good enough for me because it made me feel like I was at a meeting in my hometown. And after that was all over,